The Galactic Concord had kept peace for 11 million years. Every species in the known universe followed its laws. Every world respected its wisdom. The Concord was not just a government. It was the closest thing to a god that the galaxy had ever known. At the heart of the Concord stood the Elder Council. These were beings so old that they remembered when most stars were still being born. The oldest among them were the architects. They were not made of flesh and bone like humans. They were creatures of pure light and thought. They had built the first civilizations. They had seeded life across 1,000 galaxies. When they spoke, reality itself seemed to listen. Ambassador Thessavorn had never felt so small in her entire life. She stood in the council chamber. A room so vast that clouds formed near its ceiling. Around her floated hundreds of alien representatives. Some had wings. Some had tentacles. Some existed as clouds of gas or swarms of tiny machines. All of them were watching her. Thesa was humanity's first ambassador to the Elder Council. Earth had only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. Compared to species that had ruled the stars for millions of years, humans were like newborn babies taking their first steps. But Thesa was not afraid. She had worked her whole life for this moment. She had learned 12 alien languages. She had studied the customs of 100 different species. She had crossed 10,000 light years just to stand in this room and speak these words. On behalf of Earth and all human colonies, she said, her voice steady and clear, I formally request membership in the Galactic Concord. The chamber fell silent. Thesa had expected questions. She had expected tests. She had expected the elders to look down at humanity with the patient amusement of adults watching children play. She had not expected them to be afraid. The architects began to flicker. Their forms of light trembled and shifted in ways that Thesa had never seen before. The other elder species pulled back, creating distance between themselves and the human ambassador. Whispers spread through the chamber like wind through leaves. High Counselor Vathan, the oldest of all the architects, raised one hand made of golden light. The whisper stopped at once. The council will consider your request, he said. His voice was like music and thunder combined. But first, Ambassador Vorn, you will come with me. There is something you must see. You followed the ancient being through corridors that seemed to stretch and bend in impossible ways. They passed through doors that opened into rooms larger than cities. They walked across bridges that floated over oceans of liquid starlight. Finally, they reached a place that made Thessa's heart stop, the Forbidden. Archived, every species in the Concord knew about this place. It was the most protected location in the universe. Inside it, the elders kept secrets too dangerous for anyone to know. Technologies that could destroy galaxies. Knowledge that could drive entire species insane. Things that had been locked away since before the formation of most solar systems. No one was allowed inside. Not even other elders. The archive had been sealed for 4 billion years. Yet the doors opened for Vathan, and he led Thesa inside. The chamber within was dark and cold. In its center floated a sphere of black metal, larger than a house. Strange patterns covered its surface, lines of silver that moved and flowed like living things. The sphere hummed with a low sound that Thessa felt in her bones more than heard with her ears. "What is this?" she asked. "We do not know," Vathan admitted. His light had grown dim, almost fearful. "It was here when we first achieved consciousness. It was here before the Concord existed. It was here before the oldest stars in the universe were born. We have studied it for 11 million years and learned nothing." He turned to face her, and Thesa saw something in his ancient eyes that chilled her blood. It was terror. Pure, absolute terror. "There is a symbol on the device," he continued. "We have never been able to translate it. We searched every language of every species that ever existed. We found nothing." Pointed to a spot on the sphere's surface. Thesa stepped closer and looked at the marking he indicated. Her heart nearly stopped. "That is Sumerian," she whispered. "It is one of the oldest human languages. It has been dead for over 5,000 years. "What does it say?" Vathan asked. Thesa stared at the ancient symbol carved into technology that predated Earth itself. Her voice shook when she spoke. says awakening. The silence that followed was heavier than worlds. Your species did not evolve naturally, Ambassador, Vathan finally said. We have suspected this for some time. The speed of your development, the uniqueness of your neural patterns, the way you think and feel and dream, nothing else in the universe is quite like humanity. He moved closer to her, his light flickering with each word. Something created you. Something designed you for a specific purpose. And whatever that something was, it left this device behind. It left it with instructions written in a language that would not exist for billions of years. A language that only humans would ever be able to read. Stessa could not speak. Her mind was racing, trying to understand what she was hearing. We were warned, Vathan continued. When we first found this place, there was a message waiting for us. It said that one day a young species would come. A species born of water and carbon, with minds that burned like fire. When that species arrived, the device would activate. And when the device activated, everything would change. Change how? Thesa managed to ask, "I do not know." And that is what terrifies us. Vathan's form flickered violently. The device has been dormant for 4 billion years, Ambassador. It has sat in silence through the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Nothing we did could wake it. Nothing we tried could make it respond. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. 3 hours ago, your ship entered Concord space, and for the first time in 4 billion years, the device began to hum. Thesa turned to look at the sphere. It pulsed with a faint light, like a heart beginning to beat. The silver patterns on its surface moved faster now, swirling and dancing in ways that seemed almost eager. Something impossibly old was waking up, and it had been waiting for humanity all along. Dr. Marcus. Chen had spent 30 years being called a fool. He was a xenorchaeologist, a scientist who studied ancient alien ruins. But Marcus had a theory that made other scientists laugh at him. He believed that humanity had been created by something. He believed that somewhere in the universe, there was proof that humans were not an accident of nature, but a deliberate design. His colleagues called him a dreamer. His university cut his funding. His wife left him because he spent more time looking at the stars than at her. Marcus lost everything, chasing a theory that no one believed. Now he stood in the forbidden archive, and he was not laughing. The black sphere floated before him, humming with energy that made his teeth vibrate. Ambassador Thesa Vorn stood beside him, along with a dozen elder species who watched with ancient, worried eyes. They had brought Marcus here because he was Earth's greatest expert on dead languages. If anyone could read the writing on the device, it was him. Marcus walked slowly around the sphere, studying the patterns on its surface. The silver lines moved constantly, forming shapes that almost looked like words before dissolving into new patterns. But underneath all that movement, carved deep into the black metal, was writing. Real writing. Writing that Marcus recognized. "This is cuneiform," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "The oldest form of human writing. It was used in ancient Mesopotamia over 5,000 years ago." He touched the cold surface of the sphere. The metal seemed to warm under his fingers, as if welcoming him. "But that is impossible," said one of the elders, a being made of crystalline structures that chimed when it spoke. "This device existed before your planet had even cooled from its formation. How could it contain human writing?" "Because whoever built this knew we would come," Marcus replied. "They knew exactly when humanity would evolve. They knew what languages we would create. They planned for this moment billions of years before Earth even existed." He began to translate the text, reading aloud as the elders listened in silence. The message was long. It spoke of things that Marcus could barely understand. It talked about the nature of the universe. It's about the cycles of creation and destruction that had repeated countless times before. It describes something called the Great Filter, a test that all intelligent species eventually faced. The elders stirred at these words. They knew about the Great Filter. Every advanced civilization knew about it. It was the reason why the universe seemed so empty, despite being so old. Most species destroyed themselves before they could spread to the stars. War, disease, environmental collapse, artificial intelligence gone wrong. There were 1,000 ways to fail the test. The elders believed they had passed the filter long ago. They had survived their early years. They had learned wisdom and patience. They had built the Concord to help younger species avoid the mistakes they had made, but the message on the sphere said something different. You've not passed the filter, Marcus read. You have only delayed it. The true test is coming. It has always been coming, and when it arrives, all the wisdom in the universe will not save you. The chamber fell silent. Even the humming of the sphere seemed to quiet, as if the device itself was waiting for what came next. The device is humanity's inheritance. Marcus continued reading. It is not a weapon. It is not a shield. It is an answer. When the filter comes, only human minds can activate it. Only human hearts can understand what must be done. What does that mean? Thesa asked. What are we supposed to do? Marcus shook his head. The rest of the text is damaged. I can only make out fragments. Something about 7 minds becoming one. Something about a choice that only humans can make. Before anyone could respond, alarms began to scream throughout the archive. Red light flooded the chamber. The elders rushed to communication devices, their ancient voices rising in panic. What is happening? Thesa demanded. High Counselor Vathan appeared beside them, his form of light now pale and flickering with fear. The temporal monks, he said. They are beings who can see glimpses of the future. They have been watching the time streams for any sign of danger, and they have seen something. Something they cannot explain. Something that has made them stop looking entirely. Vathan turned to face the black sphere, which was now glowing brighter than ever before. The great filter you spoke of, he said to Marcus. The message said it was coming. We assumed that meant years from now, centuries, perhaps millennia. When he spoke again, his voice was hollow with despair. We were wrong. It is already here. It has been moving toward us for eons, and we never saw it because we did not know what to look for. But the device knew. The device has always known. And when your ship arrived, when it began to wake, the filter noticed. What is it? Marcus asked. What is the filter? Vathan did not answer immediately. He seemed to be struggling to find words for something beyond words. Call it the absence, he finally said. It is not alive. It is not dead. It is simply ... nothing. A darkness between stars that swallows everything it touches. It has been growing at the edge of known space since before we achieved consciousness. We watched it consume galaxies. We watched entire civilizations vanish into its shadow. We did nothing because there was nothing to be done. And now it is coming here. It is already coming. It has changed direction. It is moving faster than it ever has before. Vathan's light flickered violently. It noticed the device waking up. It noticed humanity. And whatever it is, whatever drives it, it does not want that device to be activated. Marcus looked at the sphere. Its glow was warm now, almost comforting. The silver patterns on its surface had formed into new words, words that he could read as easily as his own name. We have been waiting for you, the word said. The choice is coming. Be ready. Outside the archive, across 1,000 worlds, the stars began to dim. Something was coming. Something that had consumed galaxies. Something that even the elders, with all their power and wisdom, could not stop. In humanity, the youngest species in the Concord, was the only hope the universe had left. The absence had no shape. It had no form. It was simply a place where existence stopped. Those who tried to describe it spoke of a wall of darkness moving through space. But darkness was the wrong word. Darkness was just the absence of light. This was the absence of everything. Where it passed, stars went out. Planets crumbled to dust. Even the empty void of space itself seemed to dissolve, leaving behind something that hurt to look at, something that hurt to think about. The elders had known about the absence for millions of years. They had watched it from afar, safe in the heart of their great Concord. They had seen it swallow the Karveth Empire, a civilization that had once ruled 10,000 worlds. They had seen it consume the crystal minds of Nexus 7, beings of pure thought who had believed themselves immortal. They had seen it end, the dreaming collective. Species that lived in shared imagination and had never known war or hatred. None of them had survived. None of them had escaped. The absence did not conquer or destroy in ways that could be fought. It simply ended things. Like a story reaching its final page. Like a candle flame being pinched out by cold fingers. The elders had done nothing to help these lost civilizations. Not because they were cruel. Not because they did not care. But because there was nothing to be done. The absence could not be fought. It could not be reasoned with. It simply was, and now it was coming for them. Ambassador Thessa stood before the full council as panic spread through the chamber. Species that had lived for millions of years were screaming. Beings that had witnessed the birth of stars were weeping. The architects themselves, the oldest and most powerful creatures in existence, floated in terrified silence. "We must retreat," one of the elders said. It was a creature called a foldwalker, a being that could step between dimensions like a human stepping between rooms. "We can collapse into pocket universes. We can hide in the spaces between realities. We can wait until the absence passes. It will not pass." High Counselor Vathan replied, "It has never passed. It only grows. If we hide, we will simply delay our end. We will not escape it." "Then we fight," said another elder, a massive being of living metal called a Forge Lord. "We have weapons. We have fleets. We have power beyond imagination." "We have tried," Vathan said softly. "Others have tried. The Karveth had weapons that could crack planets in half. The crystal mines could think 1,000 years into the future and plan for every possibility. The dreaming collective could reshape reality with their shared imagination. None of it mattered. The absence does not fight. It simply ends." The Sonari, a hive mind that spanned 12 star systems, spoke next. Its voice was like a million beings talking at once. "We have calculated the probabilities," it said. "We have run every simulation. We have considered every possible action. There is no scenario in which we survive. The probability of victory is 0. Silence fell over the chamber. 0. The most advanced minds in the universe found no hope at all. Then a new voice spoke. A human voice. "0 is just a number." Everyone turned to look at Thessa. She stood in the center of the chamber, small and fragile compared to the vast beings around her. But her eyes were steady, and her voice did not shake. "Humanity has faced extinction before," she said. "Ice ages that covered our world in frost. Asteroids that blocked out our sun. Plagues that killed millions. Wars that threatened to burn our civilization to ash. Every time, the probability of survival was nearly 0. And every time we survived anyway." "You are young," one of the elders said, not unkindly. "You do not understand what you are facing." "Maybe not," Thessa admitted. "But I understand something you seem to have forgotten. Hope is not about probability. Hope is about choice. You can choose to give up, or you can choose to fight. And humans always choose to fight." She turned to face Vathan. "The device in the archive was left for us. It was designed for human minds. Maybe it cannot stop the absence. Maybe nothing can. But we will not know unless we try." Dr. Marcus Chen stepped forward to join her. "I have studied the writing on the device," he said. "It requires 7 human minds to activate. 7 people who are willing to merge their consciousness with technology we do not understand. The process might kill them. It might do nothing at all. But it is the only chance we have." "And where will you find these 7? Vathan asked. Before Marcus could answer, his communication device lit up. Then another. Then another. Across the chamber, every human device began to flash with incoming messages. Thessa looked at her own screen, felt tears form in her eyes. Volunteers. Millions of them. From every human world, from every colony ship, from every research station at the edge of known space. Soldiers and scientists, teachers and farmers, children and grandparents. All of them offering to give their lives for a chance to save the universe. "We will find them," Thessa said, her voice thick with emotion. "We will always find them." That is what humanity does. When the darkness comes, we light a fire. When hope dies, we build it again. When everyone else gives up, we keep going. She looked around the chamber at the ancient beings who had ruled the stars for millions of years. You are the elders. You have wisdom and power beyond anything we can imagine. But somewhere along the way, you forgot how to hope. You forgot how to fight for something even when the odds are impossible. She smiled. And in that smile was every stubborn, foolish, beautiful thing that made humanity what it was. Let us remind you. The elders stared at her in silence. Then, slowly, Vathan's light began to grow brighter. Very well, he said. We will open the archive. We will let you try. But understand this, young human. If you fail, there will be nothing left. Not even memory. Not even dust. Thesa nodded. Then we will not fail. Outside the chamber, the absence drew closer. Stars vanished from the sky like candles being blown out one by one. The darkness was coming. But in the heart of the Concord, 7 humans were about to change everything. They chose 7 from millions. The selection was not based on intelligence or strength or courage. The device did not want soldiers or geniuses. It wanted something else. Something that could not be measured by tests or numbers. The writing on the sphere had been clear about one thing. The 7 needed to have minds that burned. The first was Adaz, a poet from Lagos. She had spent her life writing verses about the spaces between stars, about the silence between heartbeats, about the beauty of things that could not be seen or touched. Her words made people feel less alone in the universe. The second was Dr. Kim Suyan, quantum physicist from Seoul. She studied the smallest parts of reality, the particles that blinked in and out of existence like thoughts. She believed that the universe was not a machine, but a song, and that every atom was a note in a melody too vast for any single mind to hear. The third was Alina, a grandmother from Buenos Aires. She was 73 years old. She had survived wars and famines and the death of her husband. She had lost 2 children to disease and 1 to violence. And still, every spring, she planted flowers in her garden. Still, she smiled at strangers. Still, she believed that tomorrow could be better than today. The fourth was Arun, a blind musician from Mumbai. He had never seen the world, but he heard it in ways no one else could. His compositions made listeners weep with joy. People said that when Arun played, they could hear the sound of light itself. The fifth was Maya, a girl from Vancouver. She was only 12 years old, but her mind worked in ways that amazed scientists. She saw patterns everywhere, in the way birds flew, in the way clouds moved, in the way stars clustered together across the night sky. She did not just learn things. She understood them. The sixth was Fatima, philosopher from Cairo. She had spent her entire life asking questions that she knew had no answers. What is the meaning of existence? Why is there something instead of nothing? What makes a life worth living? She never found the answers, but she never stopped asking. The seventh was Marcus Chen, the dreamer who had never given up. They gathered in the forbidden archive as the universe died around them. The absence had reached the outer edges of the Concord. Entire star systems were vanishing every hour. The elders had evacuated what they could, but there was nowhere truly safe. If the device did not work, nothing would survive. The black sphere floated in the center of the chamber, its surface now alive with light. The silver patterns moved faster than ever, forming shapes that almost looked like hands reaching out to welcome the 7 humans. "Are you sure about this?" Ambassador Thessa asked them. "We do not know what will happen when you touch it. You might die. You might lose yourselves entirely." Lena, the grandmother, smiled gently. "My dear," she said, "I have already lived a full life. If I can give what time I have left to save others, then that is a good trade." Young Maya looked up at the sphere with wonder in her eyes. "I can hear it," she said softly. "It is singing. It has been singing for billions of years, waiting for someone to listen." One by one, the 7 stepped forward. They placed their hands on the surface of the sphere. What happened next would be remembered for as long as memory existed. The sphere began to unfold. Its surface split apart like the petals of a flower, revealing layer after layer of technology so advanced that it looked like magic. Light poured out from within, but it was not ordinary light. It was something older, something that had existed before the universe itself. The 7 humans did not scream. They did not struggle. They simply closed their eyes and let the light take them. Their minds expanded. At first, it was like drowning, like being swept away by an ocean too vast to comprehend. They felt themselves stretching, growing, becoming something more than they had ever been. Their thoughts touched each other, merged together, became one single consciousness made of 7 parts. Then they expanded further. They felt the concord. Billions of minds on millions of worlds, all burning with fear and hope. They felt the elders, ancient and wise, trembling at the edge of extinction. They felt every living thing in the universe, every spark of awareness, every dream and memory and hope. And then they felt the absence. It was not what they expected. The elders had called it darkness. They had called it emptiness. They had called it the end of all things. But the 7 merged into one, could feel something the elders had missed. The absence was tired. It was not evil. It was not cruel. It was simply exhausted. It was the weight of eternity pressing down on existence. It was the question of why anything should exist at all, asked so many times that the answer had been forgotten. It was entropy given form, despair given will, the universe slowly convincing itself that it was not worth the effort of continuing. The 7 understood now. The absence was not an enemy to be fought. It was a sickness to be healed. It was the universe forgetting why it had bothered to exist in the first place. And the device was not a weapon. It was an answer. The 7 reached out with their merged consciousness. They touched the edge of the absence. They did something that no one in the history of existence had ever done before. They spoke to it, not with words. Words were too small for what needed to be said. They spoke with everything they were. With Adi's poetry and Suyan's understanding of reality's hidden music, with Elena's stubborn hope and Arun's ability to hear beauty in darkness, with Maya's pattern-seeing mind and Fatima's endless questions, with Marcus's dreams that had never died, no. Matter how many times he was told they were foolish, they showed the absence. What it had forgotten, they showed it why existence mattered. And in the heart of the forbidden archive, surrounded by beings who had given up hope, 7 ordinary humans began to change the universe. The sphere blazed with light. The stars stopped going out, and somewhere in the infinite darkness, something ancient stirred and began to remember. The 7 minds burned like a single flame in the darkness. They had reached across the void to touch the absence. They had spoken to it in a language older than words. And now, connected to something that had consumed galaxies, they waited for an answer. The absence did not respond with violence. It did not try to destroy them or swallow them whole. Instead, it simply asked a question. Why? The word echoed through the merged consciousness of the 7 humans. It was not spoken aloud. It was felt in every part of their being. It was the same question the absence had been asking for billions of years. The question that had never been answered. The question that had driven it to consume everything it touched. Why should anything exist? Why should stars burn? Why should life struggle and suffer and strive? Why should the universe bother with the exhausting work of being? The elders had never answered this question because they did not know how. They had survived for millions of years by learning facts, by building technology, by understanding the rules that governed reality. But they had never stopped to ask why reality should exist at all. The question seemed pointless to them. Existence simply was. There was no reason to look deeper. But humans were different. Humans had always asked why. It was the first question every human child learned to speak. Why is the sky blue? Why do people die? Why are we here? Humans asked why even when there were no answers. They asked why, especially when there were no answers. It was the engine that drove them forward, the fire that burned in their hearts, the thing that made them reach for the stars, even when the stars seemed impossibly far away. And now, faced with the oldest and most terrible question in the universe. 7 humans did not hesitate. They answered with memories. Alina showed the absence of morning in her garden. Sunlight warm on her face, the smell of roses filling the air. The simple joy of being alive on a beautiful day. Arun played music from his memory, a lullaby his mother had sung to him when he was small. The sound of rain on a tin roof, the way silence could be full of meaning if you knew how to listen. A day's recited poetry without words, the feeling of finding the perfect phrase. The moment when language becomes more than communication and turns into art. Su-Yeon shared the wonder of discovery. The thrill of understanding something new, the way the universe revealed its secrets to those patient enough to look. Maya showed patterns. The spiral of a seashell echoing the spiral of a galaxy. The way everything connected to everything else in ways too beautiful to be accident. Fatima offered questions. Not answers, but questions. The joy of seeking. The meaning found in the search itself. The understanding that not knowing was not emptiness, but possibility. And Marcus shared his dreams. All the years of being called foolish, all the times he had been told to give up, and the quiet certainty burning in his heart that somewhere out there was something worth finding. Together, the 7 showed the absence what it had forgotten. They showed it a child laughing in sunlight. They showed it lovers holding hands in the dark. They showed it friends sharing bread and wine and stories around a fire. They showed it the moment when a mind first understood that the universe was vast beyond imagining and felt not fear, but wonder. Small things, fragile things. Things that did not last, but things that mattered. The absence trembled. It had been consuming existence for so long that it had forgotten what existence felt like. It had been asking why for so long that it had forgotten there were answers that could not be spoken. It had been ending things for so long that it had forgotten the beauty of beginnings. And in that moment, something changed. The absence did not disappear. It did not collapse or dissolve or retreat in defeat. Instead, it shifted. It transformed. The endless hunger that had driven it for billions of years began to quiet. The despair that had made it consume everything it touched began to heal. It remembered what it had been before it became the absence. Long ago? Before time had meaning, there had been a force that sparked stars into being. A force that stirred dust into life. A force that whispered possibilities into the void and watched with joy as those possibilities became real. That force had grown tired over the eons. It had seen too much. It had asked why too many times without hearing an answer. It had slowly transformed from creation into destruction, from hope into despair. But now, thanks to 7 small beings on a tiny world at the edge of a modest galaxy, it remembered. The darkness began to pull back across the universe. Stars that had gone out flickered back to life. Worlds that had been on the edge of oblivion felt the shadow lifting. The elders, watching in stunned disbelief, saw the absence retreating for the first time in their long history in the Forbidden Archive. The 7 humans collapsed. They were alive. Exhausted beyond measure, their minds bruised from carrying the weight of cosmic communication, but alive. The sphere that had held them floated gently down to the floor, its light fading to a soft glow. Its work was done. Thesa rushed forward and gathered Marcus in her arms. "Did it work?" he asked weakly. "It worked," she said, tears streaming down her face. It worked. The Galactic Concord would never be the same. The architects, humbled by what they had witnessed, offered humanity not membership in the Concord, but partnership. Equals in a universe they had helped to save. The other species looked at humans with new eyes. These young, fragile, short-lived creatures had done what 11 million years of elder wisdom could not. The absence would return someday. The temporal monks could see that much in the time streams. But it would not return as a destroyer. It would return as a seeker, a questioner, a student. It would come looking for more answers, more reasons, more proof that existence was worth the effort, and humanity would be waiting for it. Ambassador. Theseus stood before the renewed council and spoke the words that would be remembered for eternity. We are not special because we are powerful. We are not special because we are wise. We are special because we never stop asking why. We never stop hoping. We never stop reaching for something beyond ourselves. We light candles in the darkness even when we cannot see the end of the night. She looked around at the ancient beings who had doubted her species. That is what humanity offers the universe. Not answers. Not solutions. Just the stubborn refusal to give up. Just the crazy belief that things can always get better. She smiled, and the smile held all the warmth of a sunrise after a long, dark night. The story is not over. It never has to be. As long as someone is willing to turn the page, there is always another chapter waiting to be written, across 1,000 galaxies. The stars burned a little brighter than before, and somewhere in the spaces between them, the universe remembered why it had bothered to exist at all. Because existence was not a burden, it was a gift, and humanity had helped it. Remember how to unwrap it.